How am I supposed to optimize my federal resume for specific jobs? Hey, I am Chuck the Bureaucrat, and today I am going to share with you a tiny hack that can make a huge difference when it comes time for you to apply for a federal job. You see, when you apply through USAJOBS for a federal position, you're going to see something called a position description. And at first glance, it's just major duties, responsibilities, supervisory relationships, the kind of things you'd expect anywhere. But here's the secret. That position description was not written from scratch. It was built to comply with standards that are the same throughout the federal government. And those standards, and understanding them, help us optimize a resume. Now, in an earlier video, I laid out all of the Office of Personnel Management's tools to make writing a position description easier. And today what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to reverse engineer them. But before I can do that, I got to recap. Office of Personnel Management is the chief human resources agency for all federal agencies. OPM has a handbook that divides out all federal jobs into groups or families and series, kind of like branches and MOSs. Each occupational group has its own manual that lays out the standards associated with the series that are part of that group. Every position description has a list of 9 factors that it has to address, describing the job, things like the knowledge that's necessary to do the job and the conditions that the job is performed under. Each factor has a set of levels that differentiate the difficulty associated with that factor. Each factor and level combination has a number of points associated with it. And if you total up all the points across all factors, you can compare that to a grade conversion chart that tells you what GS level is associated with the position description. Now, let's put this information to use in writing a resume. The first thing you're obviously going to want to do is look at your work experience and determine what groups and series your experience overlaps with the most. While you're doing this, don't get tunnel vision on one series. On one hand, your work experience is very likely to overlap with multiple groups and series. And since it's easier for civilians to move within a series, there's a tendency for 2 different organizations that are advertising similar jobs to describe them differently so that they fall within the series which is most common for that organization. Once you've gone through the series that you might be qualified for, you're going to want to go back through your job experience and rewrite your duties and accomplishments using the language from the manual for the group and series. When you do this, you want to make sure that you hit the factors that contribute the most points. Those are generally knowledge and supervisory responsibility. And pay particular attention to the level that your experience aligns to. I'll talk a little bit more about this, but for now, in general, if you're going to use language for a specific factor and level for multiple bullets, it's a good idea to be using the same language from that factor and level for all of your bullets in that job. One last thing to keep in mind as you're crosswalking your experience to individual series is that different job families and different series value different experiences differently. You've probably heard people say that you should customize your resume to the specific jobs that you're applying for. And no place is that more clearly obvious than if you're going to be applying for government jobs with different series. Okay, once you have gone through and you've crosswalked your experience into these series, you can go into USAJOBS and you can start building your custom resumes. But there's a couple more things that you might want to take into consideration. Remember how I said that you want to pay attention to the levels that your previous work experience aligns to? One of the things to keep in mind is that civilians are hired and promoted based on proven expertise. And that's a little different than military people experience, when they're going through the promotion process and they're selected for promotion based off of proven potential. When you're writing your resume, you want to show that you've already performed at the level that is being advertised. Next, it's important to know that applying for federal jobs is a relatively long process. And every so often, I'll hear somebody who's getting ready to retire say, I don't know if I want a civilian job or a contract job. I guess I'll just start applying once I get closer to retirement. And my feeling on that is that's not a very good idea. My advice? As soon as you have an inkling that you might be retiring and you're interested in government jobs, start applying for them. The whole purpose of applying for a job is to get to the interview. But it's not uncommon for people building their first version of their resume to have some kind of mistake that causes them to be screened out so that they never make it to the interview process. You want to make sure that if you do have such an error in your resume, you detect it and fix it. And to do that, you need to start early. But people say, Chuck, what if I apply, I get to the interview, I rock the interview, but then I have to tell them that I'm months away from being able to take the job? Well, first of all, that's the kind of problem you want to have. And then just be open and honest with the hiring panel. You are not going to be the first person who uses an interview as a live rehearsal for future interviews. And in some cases, the hiring panel actually appreciates the opportunity to get a sense of what the labor market looks like through the hiring process. More importantly, this is something that I've seen before. Somebody goes into an interview, they do awesome. The hiring panel says, you're great. You'd be perfect for this job, but we're really looking for someone sooner. So you shake hands, you say goodbye, and you go your separate ways. And then the hiring panel offers the job to their number one pick, and that person turns them down. Then the hiring panel offers the job to their number two pick, and that person negotiates with them for a very long time and then turns them down. And then the hiring panel says, whatever happened to that guy who is getting to retire? All of a sudden, your timeline and their timeline link up. Now, you've stuck with me a long time, and so I'm going to give you one last piece of advice that you might want to use, or at least think about. If you're in the military, you probably have access right now to force structure documents that show you where civilian positions are, the organizations they're in, what their GS levels are, and what series they are. If you have a specific location that you're interested in, you might use that information to figure out what types of jobs are there. If you have a particular series you're interested in, you might use that information to determine what organizations are looking for people with those skills. And either way, you can use that information to see if there's upward mobility within a series or if there's some kind of promotion cap. Once you've identified an organization that you might be interested in working with, you can start to use that to develop relationships, either with people who might be on the hiring panel, so you know what's important to them, or you might reach out to people who currently work for that organization, first to get a sense of whether or not it'd be a good fit for you, and then also to understand when there might be upcoming vacancies. At the end of the day, there is absolutely no reason that any of us should be in the dark about how to optimize our federal resumes. But the truth of the matter is, most people don't know this information, and as a result, this should give you a significant advantage as you go through your application process. So until next time, I am Chuck the Bureaucrat. Follow me for more tactics, techniques, and procedures on how we can navigate this bureaucracy more smoothly.